I'm sure there's always more questions, but while we search for those, we can always talk about the crypto market in general. I mean, I
Do it.
think the most prevalent thing right now is the SEC's clear and obvious war on crypto.
I've been following this and writing some posts about it. And obviously, it's of big interest to, I think, anybody who's invested in crypto. My line of thinking has always been that regulation is good for this industry. You need regulation to have, real adoption at scale, not just in terms of like retail adoption, but, for, institutions to come in and really take crypto to the next level. I think you need regulation, but regulation means having clear guidelines, clear rules to follow, and clear processes to get, assets, tokens, securities, whatever you want to call them, to get them listed and traded on exchanges. That's what regulation means. What the SEC has been doing under, Gary Gensler has been not doing that. So they are, and Coinbase rightly calls it regulation by enforcement. So, they aren't really giving any guidelines to anybody. They're not willing to work with anybody. Coinbase says that they've been reaching out and they've had, some ridiculous number, like dozens of meetings with the SEC over the last several months, trying to get clarity on, what they can do and what they can't do, and how they can be compliant. And they say that the SEC is not basically non-responsive. So, it's pretty clear that this is some kind of like personal vendetta against crypto, not regulation. So when people call this crypto regulation or a regulatory crackdown, I don't really look at it that way. I look at it more as like a vendetta that for some reason they're trying to like cancel crypto like they do to, the influencers that they don't like. I've never been against regulation. I've never been concerned about regulation, but I do find it concerning with crackdowns like this that have no real basis in reality. And I watched a podcast talking about the trading volume in the US for crypto, and that it was down to 15%. And every year it continues to decrease. So capital, talent, companies are leaving US borders in order to operate in this industry. And I think, obviously we're all super biased because we're already in this industry, but no matter who you are, I think it's undeniable that crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain technology is going to have a very big role to play in the future. It's kind of like people who are like AI naysayers that say, oh, it's just a fad and it's going to go away, or people who did that with the internet. Crypto is not going anywhere. It's a completely new industry, and some of the most talented people in the world right now who are building companies and working at companies are building not only in the AI space, but in the crypto space. And if you crack down without clear regulation, you're just going to keep pushing people out of your borders. Imagine if the US banned the internet and said, you can't use the internet in the United States. You can't build a company that uses the internet. You can't be a consumer who uses the internet. You can't build a corporation that leverages the internet. What would have happened? All the innovation, talent, and capital would have moved overseas. And we're kind of seeing that happening with crypto right now, which I think is kind of sad to see, because I think the US's value proposition in the world is as an innovation center. And, obviously I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that get diminished. But there was recently, breaking news. And Kat, I want to hear your opinion on this and what you think. A bill was just proposed to remove Gary Gensler from the SEC and actually restructure it to have a SEC board instead of just a chairman. Have you seen that, and what do you think about it?
I didn't actually see even the details. I just saw the SEC Stabilization Act and the headline that it basically was aiming to get him removed. I think the board idea is good because, you get more of a democracy and less of a dictatorship. So at the end of the day, if you have one ass clown in a position of power, it's not all encompassing and kind of screwing everyone. Because with the board, it's like, let's just say you have a board and Gensler's on that board. Well, that's just one person out of whatever it is. Let's just say it's 3 people. So if he's ridiculous and the other 2 aren't, then, well, there you go. The impact is going to be much less negative. I always like the idea of some kind of board with limits, though, because you also get the too many cooks in the kitchen problem. I think, it's kind of like, what do you have? Like Supreme Court justices. There's not just one, and for good
Right.
reason. So
Yeah. You don't want to have one person in charge of something that is so impactful to, the economy and companies and retail investors. And, it's that's kind of counter to how this whole, government and country is set up.
on the flip side, though, I mean, there's also on this, I'm sure there's plenty of people that, have this theory, but there's also just that alternative outlook where there's people that don't believe like Gensler really is anything but just a figurehead, and he's just receiving marching orders from powers that be that are higher than him. You know what I mean? If he is removed, will it change anything? That remains to be seen. Ideally, it does. There's cliche statements out there for a reason. And, one that's been around for more than my lifetime is the more things change, the more they stay the same. So,
Yep.
we shall see if there's a turnover at the top of the SEC, what kind of impact that has, or if it's just more so a publicity event. Either way, I think change will be good. We know what we got, and it ain't good. In this case, the devil is not better than the devil you don't. I don't really see how I don't see how it could get worse. I mean, there's just straight hate on crypto from the SEC.
Yeah, I think it's a personal type of vendetta, especially because, the funny thing is that Gensler actually, I think Binance's board came out with information that they showed that Gensler applied for a position
Yeah,
to work at Binance. So it's really funny to see. It's almost like, hey, I got rejected from working in this industry, so now I'm going to tear it down.
could be. There are people that are
So
that
yeah,
childish.
yeah. I mean, it's so at the end of the day, I think it all is going to shake out somewhere in the middle. I think that's kind of how the world tends to work. You move as a
Generally what
pendulum and then
happens.
you settle in the middle.
That is generally what happens.
So inflation, everyone's obviously been keeping a close eye on inflation. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the UK right now. The Bank of England is still very worried about inflation, and people seem to be betting that they're going to see more interest rate hikes, in the UK. So, that's kind of interesting considering that this week we've got, the Fed meeting again. And I think the general expectation is a rate pause, or a quarter of a basis point increase. So what's your take?
I mean, it seems like everyone is settled in and is positive that they're going to pause this month. And then the latest I saw is there's the odds for a July increase is 67% for a quarter point, but they're going to pause this month. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the month over month inflation data was better than expected, at 0.1. We're down to 4. In theory, inflation, still exists. Like, the cost of everything still went up over the past month. And the year over year rate, we're going to continue to see decline, because I talked about this a while back. I think there was a matrix, and it basically showed like as long as month over month was like 0.4 or less, that the rate of inflation would decrease on a year over year basis, because of the comparisons from last year being so freaking high. So it's kind of funny. I mean, yeah, inflation's down, but I'm more than happy for the Fed not to raise, because it doesn't help me at all. I got plenty of interest rates that are ticking up every time the Fed raises. So cost of money increasing, but we shall see. The market's been pretty on point so far with the Fed raises, the amounts, and we'll see if they get it right this time. I am wrapping up the recap post because I have a hard stop at 1:30 Eastern. So if there's any other last minute questions, I feel like we kind of touched on any of the noteworthy economic crypto events.
Hive's been at the Web3 Berlin conference.
That's right.
That is a big win for Hive in terms of marketing. I think a lot of people have been looking forward to some Hive marketing in general. I know that's obviously been a huge point for pretty much everybody in the world of Hive. One thing that I've been really excited about, and I wrote a post if you guys want to see more expanded thoughts on what I think about Hive right now, but I've actually gotten really excited about Hive from a economic perspective. I've always been really bullish on Hive from a technology perspective, which is why obviously I've spent a lot of resources and time building on this blockchain. But there's a lot more behind the scenes with Hive lately in terms of economics that have gotten me excited. I wasn't always very excited about Hive from a investment perspective, on like an investment in the crypto token perspective. I was more bullish on investing in the technology. But lately, with all the changes with HBD and namely HBD, but then also with resource credits and the idea of projects growing in the future, I've gotten a lot more bullish on Hive as a token. So obviously go read my post if you want to hear more about that. But in the short term, I'm bullish on Hive because of HBD. I think we can bring in a lot of capital and institutional grade money into this ecosystem, which is sorely needed. I also think it's a huge and positive marketing play. That's how Terra Luna, grew into this huge project. And obviously that's an interesting example to use because of how it ended. But HBD has mechanisms in place to not end up like that. So I think it's important that if we could get that in front of the right people, Hive could, start to market itself and actually start to take off in terms of users and investors. And then, so that's kind of like my short-term vision of Hive economically. My long-term vision of Hive economically is around resource credits and users and applications. If you can get 100 projects like Leo and Splinterlands to grow and get tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of users, then resource credits are going to actually be expensive and hard to get, which is what you want, because that means that the Hive price is going up. So I'm actually pretty bullish on Hive, both in the short term and long term, for those two reasons, but obviously not financial advice. But I have been accumulating some Hive, and I've been accumulating a lot of HBD lately. So definitely starting to get bullish on this ecosystem in terms of finance, not just in terms of technology.
Yeah, I mean, I stack Hive just by keeping my post rewards. I haven't been buying it. I did buy some HBD earlier in the year. I got a chunk. There was a certain stack I wanted to get to, and I have that all in savings. And I reinvested the earnings, the monthly earnings from those savings to get to a specific number that I wanted to reach, which I will basically be at come the end of this month. After that, I may take some of those HBD earnings and deploy them into either Hive or Leo.
I hear Leo's got some potential, but I don't know. I'm not too clued in on it.
Rumor has it some random dude's been talking about Leo potential for price to go up.
You never know. You never know.
You never know is indeed correct. But anyway.